Item B, which is a resolution setting a public hearing date for the 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Program. Mr. Perez, and this is a action meeting topic.
Yes, it is. Thank you and good evening, as I'm getting this set up. Here we go. So, policy question is, should the council pass this resolution to set a public hearing date for adoption of the 2025 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Plan on June 18th, 2024? So state law requires that we annually update the Transportation Improvement Plan, subject to a public hearing prior to adoption. Staff proposes that hearing to be held on June 18th. Options considered is to approve the proposed resolution or do not, and provide direction to staff. And the mayor's recommendation is to approve option 1, to forward the proposed resolution to the May 21st consent agenda for approval. And happy to answer with any questions with that.
Okay, you want us to move left on this, right? Is there any questions? I have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed resolution to the May 21st, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perez. We will now go to the SWIM Small CIP Stormwater Structure Repairs.
This one is almost as exciting. So good evening, EJ Walsh, I'm Public Works Director. On behalf of our operations manager who couldn't be here tonight, I'm here with the Stormwater Structures Repair Small Works CIP. So the policy question is, should City Council authorize staff to proceed with preparing and bidding the SWIM Small CIP Stormwater Structures Repair and return to land use for authorization and to award? So as background information, we have, for about the last 15-ish years, had a small project, small SWIM CIP, which is used for a range of projects, but it's typically large-scale maintenance projects or small construction projects. It's budgeted at $150,000 per year in the surface water capital improvements budget. And it supports those two things. It also does support purchase of equipment to support SWIM. So we looked at a couple different options this year, and the big thing we are starting to see is failing stormwater structures in a couple of the arterial roads, and I'll show you a map in a second. So the majority of these structures have the same problem. The top section is failing from heavy truck impacts on them, and they're all within high travel corridors, which means most of this work will be night work. We do replace several structures per year as staff. However, the scale and the number of these kind of exceeds staff's ability. So we are looking this year, if council's in agreement, to bring in a contractor to make a dent in fixing these. So at a macro level, the red lines are everywhere that the structures are. We are proposing that they be completed in schedules. It is 33 unique locations. And then in a little bit more detail, each one of those call-outs is a structure. So the majority of them are along Pack Highway. Basically from 276th is the furthest north, and then the furthest south is about 330th on Pack Highway, and then you can see there's some down on Enchanted. There are two just off of the two on the bottom center of the screen are just off of Pack Highway. They're actually on 356th, and then there's one out on campus, which is the one way to the left. Budget-wise, as I mentioned, this project has a budget of $150,000. We are proposing to design it in-house. It's effectively a spec design. The construction value itself is anticipated to be about $125,000, and we will bid this in schedules. That way, if there's more than what we're capable of biting off in 1 year, we can award basically up to that value. And with that, the mayor's recommendation is to authorize staff to prepare and bid the project and return to council. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Yeah, just one quick question. When you say you guys design in-house and it has $10,000 against it, does that mean that billing hours for that project go against that cost to offset it?
Correct.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, so can you explain just a little more exactly what it is that's being done? I mean, it's the stormwater drainage under the,
So it's the structures. So the majority of these are effectively, they're the round manholes that are in the street, that when you drive over, your car sinks a little bit and then comes back up, and it feels like you hit a pothole, and when you look in your rearview mirror, you realize there's a manhole lid there. A number of the ones that have fallen over the years are not ours, they're other utilities. But that being said, the way these are built is it's a concrete top section, and then there's a steel frame that gets, it's effectively bolted into the concrete. And over time, the trucks just continually, and it's large-scale trucks, just hitting that on the angle, eventually those bolts either shear and it breaks the concrete around them, or it breaks the bolt and the bolt itself shears off. When that happens, staff can basically go in, we jackhammer the road out, rebolt the thing down in a new location, and we put the road back and we're off to the races. Where the concrete has actually failed below the frame mount, that's a little bit more intensive of a repair. So we have to dig open the road, and then in addition to taking that steel piece out, we actually have to take the top piece of concrete out and put a new one in, and then put a new frame on it, and then repave it back. So that's what this project is.
okay, all right. And you, with the number of projects like that, I mean, the 150,000, is that, it sounds like it's right up front, it's not going to cover all of them.
So we're going to award it in schedules, so that if there isn't enough funding, we can award the maximum that we can within that funding. This is a small CIP project, which has regulatory meanings too, so we are trying to keep it under that dollar value. But that being said, it's one of those, if we find a contractor that's looking for work for a crew, we'll be able to do all of them.
Okay.
If we don't, we may have to cut a couple.
Okay, all right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion?
Yes. I move to forward the option 1 to the May 21st, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Lydia's joined, so Lydia, if you have questions, make sure you wave your hand, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about the initiation of a development agreement for Kitts Corner. Mr. Niven.
Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members Tran and Walsh, Council President Coach Marr, and council members, Keith Niven, Community Development Director. So it's going to feel a little bit like Groundhog Day. We actually had a conversation in March of last year about initiating a development agreement with Grand Peaks for this same property. They fell out of contract, and it went under contract with Christian Faith Center, and here we are this evening. So the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the City Council initiate negotiations of a development agreement with Christian Faith Center for Kitts Corner? What we need to do ultimately is remove the existing zoning conditions. If you remember from the conversation we had a year ago, there are zoning conditions that were placed on by the City Council that requires basically the construction of big box retail at this corner. There is no market for that. There won't be market for big box retail potentially ever again, and so it's left that property kind of undevelopable. And so one of the things that we would need to do is to remove those conditions. And rather than just remove them, you know, the conversations we've had with the previous entity, which was Grand Peaks, that were interested in building housing, was to replace those existing conditions with a development agreement. And so what's being asked for from the City Council is to give us the green light to start those negotiations. Doesn't mean that we'll ultimately figure something out, but the intent is to, would be to then to come back to the council with a development agreement, and it would also require an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan. This is a snip of the city's comprehensive plan for Kitts Corner. For those of you who may not necessarily understand where Kitts Corner is, it's a southwest corner of Pack Highway and 336. It's currently the wooded area that's east of the apartment complex that got built. Because this is a comprehensive plan amendment, and we only do those once a year, it's really too late for them to kind of catch the coattails of the 2024 actions. So really what we're talking about is trying to get it done maybe by mid-year next year, assuming everything goes swimmingly. And with that, there are members representing Christian Faith Center here. Caleb and Rick and John and Mike are here if you have any questions directly for them. Otherwise, I'm here to answer any questions that I might be able to answer. And that's the end of my presentation.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, I read through the memo to get a quick update on this one, and my main question on this one is Grand Peaks Properties and with what they were looking at doing. Is there any communication, is there a reason why, or they decided not to move forward with that? They didn't see the development being a good idea?
So the way that it typically works with real estate is to tie up a piece of property for a certain period exclusively, you have to put a certain amount of money down.
Okay.
And so they put money down. It gave them a certain runway to work on this. That timeline basically expired, and they needed to put additional funds down, and they weren't willing to do that. So then that's what opened the window or the door for Christian Faith Center to put the property under contract. So they basically stepped in.
Okay, so the development agreements or pieces of property, someone's put under contract, they might not own it yet, but it allows them to figure out if they're going to develop on it or not?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So then there would be no housing on this property?
Too early to tell. So right now, what the letter is that we got from Christian Faith Center was that they're looking to build about 100,000 square foot new church facility and all the associated parking that would be necessary for that. Since we haven't seen a site plan yet, I don't know if that takes up the entire property. At least some of the early conversations we've had with their representatives have been, it'd be nice if there's room for some additional land uses there, since this is kind of in the middle of our city to some extent. So too early to tell, but we're at least looking out for, you know, some potential mixed use, so something other than a church there as well, if it fits. But we don't know that answer just yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, with it, they're saying probably about 100,000 square foot building. How does that compare in size with their present building? Is that roughly the same or bigger, smaller? Half as big as the present building?
The answer was half, yes.
Okay, all right.
Since you weren't mic'd, I'm going to keep you from
All right.
standing up.
Okay, thank you.
Council President Coach?
Oh, I'm just wondering, are they interested in putting a school there?
Does somebody want to come to the mic, please, and maybe answer council questions? Thank you. That way we get it for the record. Yeah.
Good evening. I'm John Schwartz. I'm the development representative for Christian Faith Center. Right now, the school that's there, they do not plan to continue operating a school as part of the facility.
So if they had mixed use, what else would they be considering? I'm just curious.
You know, so they're looking at a daycare, up to like 100 students for a daycare. They also, you know, they have an internal coffee service that right now is technically open to the public, but not very accessible because of the mix of the school and security needs at the building. But that's another commercial use that they are looking to see if they can figure out a way to have that open to the public and then also serve their facility during services. You know, but then there will be property that they don't need for that basic use. So that's part of this development process that we're just getting started on, is figuring out, okay, what other what other uses make sense? And we've been meeting with Keith and his team and the Economic Development Director also to kind of hear the ideas and thoughts about that corridor. And so more to come on that.
Well, we definitely need more daycare. It'd be really interesting, considering the location where they're at, if they considered doing some kind of a treatment facility for people who are on drugs.
Yeah, haven't had that conversation with them, and
Yeah,
that, like I said, there will be some additional land there that
yeah,
could be, go to other uses.
thank you.
Keith, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I think the span of 20-plus years sitting up here off and on over all these years, that piece of property has had many different opportunities come and go, and splitting the property and having a road through it and all sorts of different things. So you're looking at this, or it's being presented as a overall total project, and are some of the things that we've done in the past going to be applicable, or are we just going to start over totally from scratch, or?
Probably some combination of the two. There's some existing conditions on the property. There's also some, I don't want to say entitlements, but some provisions that the property has with it as it relates to stormwater and some other things. So we're going to have to kind of parse through all of that and come up with what looks like it's a good outcome for the city, as well as for the potential owner. And as we know, I'll just say this since we all know it, but I'll put it on the record, the Christian Faith Center is looking for other opportunities within the city, because Sound Transit is going to potentially be purchasing their property, and they will be without a facility soon.
Yeah, well, it makes good business sense to be prepared for when you don't have a place to be.
Indeed.
So, okay. Yes, Councilmember
Yeah,
Walsh.
this isn't actually a question for you, just a comment kind of in response to Council President Kochemar's question about the school, is that earlier today, I was talking with somebody who was actually a teacher at the school, and she says that the school's board or whatever is actively looking for another location separate and apart from Christian Faith Center. And so it's not, that they're not planning on the school closing or anything, but the school hopefully will stay open, but at a different location.
Okay. So do I have a motion to move this forward?
Chair, I think Lydia's trying to jump in.
Oh, Lydia, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much, and I actually did lower it, but when we say potentially, are we certain that Sound Transit has made the final decision to locate there? And if not, then what's plan B for Christian Faith? Would they stay at that location or move or continue to purchase this new property?
Do you want to do that?
As I understand it, the Sound Transit Board has identified this site as their preferred location, and, negotiations have been underway for quite a while with them on this purchase.
Okay,
I'd
thank
say
you.
It's
I was
very,
just
very
thinking-
low likelihood that this won't go through.
Okay, all right, thank you so much, and good luck.
Han?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move to forward the request to the May 21st, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to talk about the State of the Streets presentation, 2023 Pavement Management Report, information only.
Hold on. Click to exit. I have to get out of this. There we go. Sorry, it's not 100, but we'll talk some more. All right. All right. Yes, I am here to present State of the Streets, our latest pavement management report from 2023. Hopefully this works. Okay, hold on. There we go. So the purpose of today is to go over our overall pavement condition and give you an overview of our pavement management program, and then a summary of what our projected payment condition would be under current program funding and what funding would be needed to keep it at its current level. So as a reminder, our pavement is our largest asset that the city owns. We have 241 centerline miles, that is 548 lane miles. Those do not include the state routes, and I want to point that out because the pavement on the state routes belongs to WashDOT. Pacific Highway in some areas is looking a little rough. That's not us. So that would be all the state routes: Pacific Highway, Dash Point Road, State Route 161 Enchanted Parkway, as well as SR 18 goes all the way to Pack Highway. So that section in there, 348, belongs to them. So if we had to replace all our pavement at one time, it's over $350 million. We rate our streets so that we can do the best management practices what we can in maintaining them on a biannual basis. Currently, our overall pavement condition index out of 100 is a 75. It was a 78 in 2021, and it was an 86 in 2007. And we'll talk a little bit more about kind of how we've gotten there. So what does pavement condition rating look like? 30 years ago, I did this by hand. You literally go out and look at every pavement and you count cracks. Now they have this fancy van with a high definition camera, video camera in the back, videotapes in and actually can map the cracks. So it probably does a much better job than I did with my eyes and a clipboard. But that's basically the same thing that's been done for years. It's just now like at a much higher level. So 100, that's the best you can be. That's a brand new paved road. As the years go by and deterioration occurs, it'll just start taking away from the pavement condition of 100. So here's a couple of examples of some fair to poor pavement, and then very poor, which we refer to that kind of cracking as alligator cracking because it looks like the back of an alligator. Those pavement condition indexes that you see there are like a 30 and a 37. So we do have an annual overlay program. We take a look at the ratings to see where we should be, where we need to focus. We have different roadway classifications and now different sets of funding. So a few years ago, we implemented the increase in the solid waste excise tax. So we focus all those dollars, or most of those dollars, on the residentials. And our arterial fund that we call the 102 fund is primarily focused on arterials, and we use those funds to also go after grants to match for our higher volume roads. We're looking at volume, we're looking at available funding. We try to spread the residential program around. There's a lot of needs, and so we try to go with some geographic equity as we move around the city. We recommend the list, and then we bring it to council, and council approves our selection each year. So this, is this in your way too? I'm going to move it for me for a second. This is a history since 2007 of our annual overlay program. And there's a lot of information here, so I'll kind of step you through it. So in 2007, we had an annual budget around $2 million, and our pavement condition index was about an 86. The cost for asphalt was about a little over $62 a ton, and we were able to overlay about a little over 13 lane miles of road. As the years progressed, the costs went up, and we were able to do less, and our payment condition index went down. And remember this, because we're going to go over this in a little bit, it costs more to maintain the pavement when the pavement condition is worse. So we had a huge, a big cut around, 2010, 2011. Again, the prices still went up and continued to go up. Another factor in here is that we are required to upgrade all of the sidewalk ramps and sidewalk and the signals and bring them up to ADA standards. So that cuts in the amount of pavement we're actually putting on the road, but it is a requirement when we pave the roads. So it continued to degrade till 2019. Our program was only at 1.5 million. In 2021 was the first year that we had about half of the residential solid waste tax added to the program. So we've been able to bring the amount of lane miles up that we're able to pave in the last 3 years to last year, we got about 10.6 miles overlaid. And I want to point out, this is our city overlay program. This does not include the additional money that we get for grants to do preservation or overlay work on our major streets. So like right now, Military Road between SR 18 and 320th, that's a grant-funded project that we received grants for. 348th between 9th and Pack Highway will be paved out here in another month or so. That also was grant-funded. So that helps us as well. But this is strictly, again, the city-dedicated funding that goes to our pavement management program. So it's always fun just to compare. Where do we sit along with other cities? So we asked around, this is in my way again. And you like to compare, not everyone has the same amount of centerline miles. So you want to look at how much they're able to dedicate per centerline mile. We actually, in terms of the region, we're still pretty good shape. We are one of the better. And I know you all drive around, and if you compare to, Tacoma, who's got a lot more mileage than we do. They also throw a lot more money at the program, but their biggest problem is they're at a 59, and it is really expensive to try to maintain your pavement or bring it back up once it's gotten that far out of hand. All right, so here's the education process. It is, would you like to pay some now, or would you like to pay a lot more later on? This is a pavement deterioration curve. In the beginning of its life, so its life in years is along the bottom. Its pavement condition index is on the left, with the top is like it's born on day 0 after it got overlaid and has 100. And it takes about, somewhere between 12, 15 years for it to lose 40% of its life or get down to a pavement condition of 60. Once it hits 60, though, the degradation goes really fast. And that's because once you have a 60, you've got cracks opened up in the pavement, water's getting in, a lot of things are happening with that pavement, and it just deteriorates really fast. So you really want to make sure that you get to the pavement before it gets that far out of hand. So this is kind of the ideal situation, and I'd like to compare this to like your house. So you have a house and you want to paint it, and you paint it to protect your whole house, right? So if you let that paint go 8-10 years, that's not so bad. All you got to do is get a pressure washer on it, right? And then put another coat of paint on it. When you let it go 12-15 years, all of a sudden the pressure washer and all the flakes are coming off. Well, in order to put the paint on, you got to do a little more work. You're going to have to sand it, right? You're going to have to maybe go do some spot repairs before you can paint it. And that's kind of what the pavement is doing. You catch it. If you just decide, I don't have the money right now to paint my house, and you let it go 15, 17, 20 years, Well, you can't paint it. You got to replace the siding first. And hopefully that's the only thing you had to do. You didn't just have to replace the siding. It got rotten underneath, and you have even more problems. So that's exactly what asset management is and pavement management. You can, at the beginning there, the PCI, you let it drop a little bit, we can throw a crack seal on it or a thin overlay, and then we can, at a very less cost of like maybe $1 per square yard, we can bring it back up. If we let it deteriorate, now we're talking $3 a square yard. If we let it go completely, we're talking $6 to $10 a square yard to have to rebuild it. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And some people will ask, especially on our overlays on arterial roads, they'll be like, well, the road's fine. Yeah, there's a few cracks in it, there's a few patches in it, but why are you paving it now? Well, because it's a lot cheaper for us to pave it now than it is to let it continue to deteriorate. So our system, this is a chart that basically shows where our pavements sit. And the good news is most of them are sitting over on the right side. They're in good to excellent condition. The red, the 1.9%, we call that backlog. Those are the roads that are completely failed that need to be like rebuilt. And that's a very small percentage, a good amount to have down in those lower ranges. And we got to go pay attention to them at some point, right? Okay. So this is where, after they do all the ratings and they determine where our pavement is, and they run it through models on how fast different pavements are going to deteriorate depending on the number of traffic loadings they're getting, that type of thing, they come back to us and they give us a report. Our report says that this is looking at 5 years later. Our current annual budget for our overlay program is $3.7 million a year. If that's all we spend in the next 5 years, at the end of 5 years, our PCI would have gone down to a 71. In order for us to keep steady state, which is today a PCI of 75, you follow the chart along, we would need to be spending on average a $10.86 million a year. So this is just a little different way to show it, different little graph with the red line being that steady state and showing at a $10.6 million a year, it can stay at a steady state. And I think it's the green line that shows the deterioration over the 5 years, even though we're spending $3.7 million a year. So the residential overlay program, again, as I mentioned, we restarted it in 2021. We identify the areas based on the PCI, and again, we're trying to get some geographic equity. We're moving around to different neighborhoods. From 2017 to 2020, because our funding had gone down so much, we had either no or very little of an overlay program in those years. Restarting it in 2021, we've been able to do somewhere between 4.8 and 6.3 lane miles a year on our residential roads. We have a nice web page that shows the overlay program and where we try to plan to go. This is some of the overlay programs and great feedback. I mean, the public that's getting the overlays. They're loving seeing us out here, and it's been good to be able to get out there in the neighborhoods again and get this work done. The city crews also do some paving projects, and then also in the bottom right corner, annual crack sealing program. Again, that's catching that at the early phase where the cracks are just starting to show, and we can seal those cracks up and try to prevent the deterioration from happening faster. And then we've been making more of an effort to do a more robust pavement patching and repair. Again, that's kind of catching some spot areas early on and trying to help prevent the deterioration. So other things we've done, again, the patching program has increased. The city crew doing patching, we were able to purchase them what's called an asphalt zipper. It's a little grinder that hooks on the front of their Bobcat. This has greatly improved their productivity. They're able to get a lot more work done in the same amount of time, and that's been great. The city crew does a good job at doing low volume paving projects, and we've also gone back to start up our gravel road paving program, which we try to hit like one gravel road every year. And in the future, we're hoping to further increase our ability to do more patching is getting what's called a hot patch unit. We've been limited because we don't have the space and we don't have the power to plug it in. But with our new facility, we'll be able to do that. So in summary, we reinstated the residential overlay program a few years ago. Our current PCI is a 75. It is projected to reduce to a 71 in 5 years under current pavement budget of $3.7 million annually. Again, we try to help slow that down. We do everything we can and are pretty successful at getting grant funds to add to that $3.7 million. But in order to maintain the PCI of a 75, we would need $10.8 million a year. And the whole pavement report is located on our webpage. If you want to just look up road stewardship, the pavement management program is under there, and you can read the whole thing, and I think it even has like every road and all the ratings if you want to go through it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one question. If the price of asphalt goes up, then the cost is going to go up drastically, correct? Or if the cost, the cost of oil is pretty much the driving force of the cost, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
So if we get a dip in oil, then it will be less than 10 million and some change, or if oil goes up to $200 a barrel or whatever,
Right.
goes the other way. Is that?
Absolutely, and what we find is it's not just the actual asphalt, because usually in the current year, they have all their asphalt purchased, right? It's at the plant. What they're calling us about is that it costs a lot of money for us to drive these trucks back and forth. And so that's usually what initially, in a year, we actually have to offer them an asphalt price adjustment. So if something does happen, it also helps offset some of their trucking costs too.
So that's due to the climate change legislation in Washington and the cost of diesel, right? Probably.
Could be.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, that answers some of my questions. I mean, it looks like this last year, I mean, it's increased, what, like 16, 18%, something like that? I mean, that's a lot more impact than most of the previous years, and it seems like that the state,
I know what you're saying, it's all right.
Yeah, the idiocy of our legislature. Okay, all right. So anyway, all right, I said it. All right. So anyway, is driving the price up. So going back to, you mentioned sidewalk ramps that we're having to install that. Is that for ADA or what's?
Yes.
Okay. And so at some point, we should have that part completed, right? Or will that keep on going forever?
You know, 20 years ago when I started building ramps and I really thought I had it down and that was the standard 20 years ago, it changed 5 years later. And then we redid them again and then it changed 5 years later. So I would hope that we would at some point get to a point where we don't have to do so much upgrades, but the reality that has been in the last 20 years is the standards have changed regularly, and we've had to go and redo ramps that we thought were right 10 years ago.
So cost-wise and percent of budget-wise, how much impact has that had?
It really depends on where we're at. So if we are, honestly, some of the residential areas are really expensive, say per square yard, because they're in neighborhoods that were I don't know, constructed in the mid-1990s with all rolled curb, and there are no ADA ramps. And so we literally have to go to every single corner and rebuild a ramp. We can go to another neighborhood that actually has no sidewalks, and we get a lot more done because we don't have to worry about that. So the last time I looked at what kind of impact it has, I mean, it could be 10, 15% of the costs are going into concrete, versus asphalt.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that answers my questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. How many gravel roads do we have in the city?
Jeff was just telling me this earlier. Initially, he was, I think the last time he checked, it was something like 5 miles worth or something, but we've been trying to tick them off a little bit at a time. I'll have to get back to you on kind of where we're at on that.
How do you, so the city needs to maintain them as gravel roads until they're paved, correct?
Yes.
Where are they generally located at?
They're really all over the place. Generally, older neighborhoods that were probably like built pre-cityhood. So you're talking 60s, 70s, type of neighborhoods. Some are alleys, that, had alley construction. But I literally could pull a map and pick older neighborhoods in the city, and they're kind of scattered all over the place.
So how many residential streets do you think will be repaved this year?
Hold on. I had a secret slide that no, that was the arterial overlay program. I think this year it'll probably be pretty consistent with the last couple of years. We're somewhere between like 5 and 6 lane miles.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember McDaniel?
A couple questions. I would love to see a comparable with Kent and Auburn. I saw the cities you have, but a lot of times we get comparables, they use those cities because it's so close. So I'd love to see how we compare against those two. My second question is a lot of this work done in-house, or is this contracted out? The overlay projects.
Actually, all the overlay projects are contracted out.
Okay.
Done by, contract.
Now, even the little cleanups you were talking about, those little quick fixes, are those also contracted out?
Depending, we do some ourselves, with our own crews. And, we also, especially on like major roadways, we'll put together a contract and have the contractor do that, mainly because there's so much traffic control involved.
Gotcha. How much new road do we add to this growing mileage that the city is responsible for on an average year? I mean,
Not a lot, to be perfectly honest. Maybe a couple lane miles.
okay.
Yeah.
And my last question is the 3X factor, just to keep at the same pace as we're currently at. I know they mentioned oil and stuff like that. Is that just doing like you had mentioned of trying to keep it at that higher level and just finding those guys and keeping them up there? Or, at a 3X to have the same level for me, the math, just my mind is a struggle sometimes. How is it, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. Is it more roads being done to keep that consistent, like the ones that are really dropping down to bring them back up? Or is it just the cost is going to increase over the next 5 years that much that it's going to eat that much more of the budget? Are we able to get more roads done, or is it just the cost is going to go up that much more?
It's a combination of the two,
Is it?
really.
Okay.
Yeah, because our model will include inflation, assuming that the cost that we gave them today on what it costs to do different types of repairs will actually continue to go up over the years. So that's included in there. There are times where we were, certain that, it's going to follow this certain curve, and you get 3, say, mild winters in a row, right? Not a lot of freezing, and which wreaks havoc with your roads. you think you're poking along fine, and then all of a sudden you have a really bad winter and a hard freeze, and those roads that were hanging on there at like a 50 and a 60 all blow out and turn into 40s. So there's a lot that kind of goes into, you know, what that looks like. And again, it's a model. And I can tell you that when we came here with the 78, 3-4 years ago, in order to request implementing the additional solid waste excise tax, the answer then was somewhere between $5 and $6 million a year was what was needed. And we weren't asking for all of it, you know, we were asking to get to that $3.7 million level, and we're gonna try to get more grants and add to it, you know, so, and then you're right, and there's gonna be some years where other factors increase the cost of asphalt that weren't even contemplated when you were thinking a steady 4% increase a year, and then one year it's like 11%. So,
Last two questions. Has there been any technology changes to the asphalt to make them last longer, or is it pretty much the same thing they've been doing since the beginning of asphalt?
No, there definitely has been some technology changes, and in fact, one thing we are going to try this year is it's called a fiber reinforced asphalt, and it's exactly like it sounds. It is a plastic product fiber that goes within to the mix.
Like a mesh?
Yeah, but it's mixed in there. They're little fibers that get mixed in, and we're gonna try it on one of our kind of higher volume roads and kind of see what it does. Now, it will cost a little bit more per ton for that pavement, but we're hoping that the result is the life cycle costs make sense. So instead of having to come back and overlay it in 12 years, maybe we can increase it to 15, 16 years.
Okay, gotcha. Last question. I noticed when I drive by with Sound Transit, they do concrete for the roads compared to like the asphalt. What is like I'm a layman on that area, so what is the difference on why you do concrete? Is it just way more expensive? Does it last longer? Or asphalt is easy? Why would you do one versus the other?
So around Sound Transit, we're requiring them to do concrete because all of those roads are the roads that have the buses coming in and out. So you'll notice it's 317th that's going all the way out to that HOV lane. The roads that are within by the rail station, they've had to be very specific and clear about where are all the buses routing to the new station. Those roads are concrete. Pavement basically gets designed because of the heaviest loading, and buses are actually fully loaded. They are illegal. They don't, yeah, they're not even, you know, every 18-wheeler that goes by a weigh station has to weigh and make sure that their per axle load doesn't exceed a certain amount. Fully loaded buses don't have to do that. And I can tell you they exceed the axle amount. So that's why they're doing concrete there. Also because logistic-wise, they're building brand-new roads. And notice the staging, they're having to keep us off the roads and move us to one side, or they're brand-new roads internal that nobody's using right now. Concrete pavement is, one, more expensive initially, but to have to rehabilitate an existing road with concrete is very logistically difficult because you can't just pave it and then open it up 4 hours later and let somebody on it. So that's why it's not used. You're going to just see it being used for, say, new interstate, you know, lanes. And then in this special case, you'll see concrete around most bus type of facilities.
Awesome, thank you, appreciate it.
Council President Otomar?
Well, thank you. I think Paul asked my question, which was, how do we compare with neighboring cities? And I'd be curious, because I always thought we were far and above our neighboring cities because of our street overlay program. So I'm kind of surprised that in order to go, you know, we're going down 4%. In order to get it back up to 4%, we have to triple what it costs. But you've answered some of that with what the legislature is requiring. So, but it's kind of shocking. So, you know, we're not going to be able to come up with that 10 million per year, so we're going to need to figure out how to come up with some grants. And are there any grants out there?
We do a really good job getting grants. So we just got awarded, and I think, I don't know if you came yet to accept those, but it's called the National Highway System, or NHS. So most of our arterials are on that system, and they had a grant program that started about 6-7 years ago that provides grants to local agencies to pave those roads. I think we just received like $4 million in NHS grants.
Okay.
So
So, talking about neighboring cities, I'm actually more curious about what our PA area roads are like. Because if we ever do adopt that area, we're going to adopt the roads. And so I'm just curious how bad the roads are over there. I don't know if we get a report
that
on
is
that.
one very big concern that we would have, and I think every time that the question comes up about PAA, we go and basically say, this is what it's going to take, you know, to bring them up to current
So-
standards.
Sure. So the issue really is how do we get the county to do their job in that area? Because we're going to have to, that's not going to be a PA forever. That's going to be adopted by this city at some point in time. And so we really need to be looking toward the future, how to hold the county's feet to the fire to get those roads repaired.
Good question.
So I will say, the majority of the time when you really get into negotiating with the county on a significant PAA, not a small, like we're going to annex 1 or 2 properties in, there's multiple conversations, and this is one of the key things. This and typically parks are the 2 things that get heavily focused on. So the last significant one that I'm aware of is the Cascade Fairwood area that got annexed into Renton, which was like square miles, not like a property or 2. The county ended up writing a check to the city of Renton for, I believe it was $8 million a year for 8 or 10 years for the city to go in and do exactly what you're talking about.
Interesting.
So like if we're talking about a significant PAA, we would, to your point, need to have that conversation with the county. Now, whether they're willing to cut that kind of deal and what the funding level is, and there's a whole lot of negotiation that goes into that conversation. But that, and like I said, parks is usually the other big one as far as getting them to meet the city standards.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. When we talk about the new concrete roads around the train station, who is in charge of maintaining those in the future if the road were to fail? Would Sound Transit come back and repair those, or is it up to the city?
Most of those are all public right-of-way. That would all be us.
Thanks.
So I have one question. When you look at the average pavement record, and you show the picture of a 30% alligator cul-de-sac, it looked like, versus the main roads, do we separate out the main thoroughfares at what percent they're rated at versus the neighborhoods that are 30% and the cul-de-sac that nobody drives on? Is there a different metrics to look at other than the overall set of the roads?
Every road is subject to the same metrics. I can tell you, though, it does factor into our decision-making on what roads we're going to overlay.
Right.
But every road is rated the same. So same number of cracks, no matter what kind of road it's on, is going to get the same rating.
Right, but it would seem to me that if you've got a road in, name an old neighborhood, it's 30%, and you have our thoroughfares that we have, the rating's got to be pretty drastic in order to maintain the high 70s when you got a bunch of 30s. So it'd be interesting to know, and maybe it's not even possible, what the, and who knows what all the main roads are, but are they rated higher? I mean, if you
Yes.
didn't have the 30% cul-de-sacs in Village Park, would our rating of our main roads that people always drive on be much higher? And you know, you look at it, not that you can't
Right.
neglect the 30%ers, but it should be nice to know what the main roads are really at.
And I don't have it off the top of my head, but
No, I wouldn't
it is
expect
in
you
the
to,
re-
but-
it is in the report. All of our roads on average are pretty close. So like they're anywhere, it might be our local roads are more like a 72 and our main roads are like a 76. But it all averages out based on, the lane miles, right? So it's basically given equal weight per square yard of that road. And we have a lot more local roads, right, than we do main roads.
But the main roads like 320th and 21st, I guess, that's one of our roads. And the different ones, if they're tracking at 80, which I'm not saying they are. but
They're not.
The or the high 70s, it's a lot
No.
different than the road that you drive through by Lake Grove Elementary, which is, should have been replaced a long time ago or something.
Right, right.
So-
No, absolutely. And that's why when, as soon as I got here and we were looking at how much money we had for overlay, and we came here and we said, well, until we get more money, we're not going to do any overlays on residential roads because it costs us and the risks are a lot higher if one of those major roads fails or even deteriorates more.
Okay, great.
I have one more question.
Yes, Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So when a utility tears up the road to repair whatever their utility is, they're responsible for repaving the road, correct?
Depends on, yes, it depends on what extent that the tear-up is. So an example that's probably, I think, close to your neighborhood, you remember when PSC came in and was replacing a whole bunch of gas lines that were in the road? They had to come in and they overlaid all the roads on their way out, their cost. A different example, if you've been on lovely 21st Avenue Southwest, north of 356, that is a Lake Haven water main replacement project. And they're replacing their water main before our overlay. So they will get done and they will put their patches, their permanent patches back, and then we will follow after them later this summer and overlay everything.
So they're going down the center of the road, if I remember right.
Yeah,
So they're just gonna patch the center of the road and then then we overlay around that, or we overlay on top of their patch?
on top of it.
So they're doing that so that, well, I'm glad that we're all working together. It's all the same tax dollars coming from the same people, so that people don't have to pay
Yes.
twice, but,
Yeah, no, we coordinate our overlays. We try to give them information 2 years in advance. And we give them the list, all the utilities, not just Lake Haven. We're giving it to PSNE and the CenturyLinks and other telecoms of the world. And basically saying that if you've got some infrastructure that needs replacing or upgrading, you'll need to do it now. Because once we overlay it, we have what's called a 5-year payment moratorium. No cuts. If it gets cut, other than in an emergency situation, they are required to pave the road 500 feet in each direction and give us basically our 100 back.
so when, the other night when, Lake Haven had their sewer issue, did they have to dig the road up?
Yeah, they did dig a portion of the road up, yes.
And then did they repave that?
I don't think it's done yet, it's just temporary right now. They will have to put a payment patch back. That section of 348th is not within the 5-year payment moratorium, and so their patch is not going to be 500 feet of paving each direction, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Seeing no more questions, we will move on to our next agenda item. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
The progress update of Sound Transit projects in Federal Way. Mr. Smith.
Yes, good evening. So yes, Ken Smith with the Public Works Department here for the progress update on sound transit activities in the city of Fort Hawaii. So for north of 317th, finishing up some of the final landscaping, some of their duct banked ballast work, a little bit of fire standpipe installation, and then just a little bit of remaining fencing and noise wall. More utility work on Military Road near 304th as they prepare to do some of the final frontage and roadway work there. Signal House and traction power substations, they're continuing with some duct work, conduit installation, electrical connections, and CMU wall installation. And that includes the one that's in the downtown area as well as the one further north. The traffic mitigation project, which is along South 272nd and a portion of SR 99, is expected to start this summer. They just went out to bid in April. That includes, for Federal Way, not a whole lot, but there is a dedicated right turn only lane that they're going to be installing on SR 99 and at South 272nd Street. And most of that work is going to happen at night due to the volume and the location, but that should be coming. For City Center, they're still in a one-way traffic configuration on northbound 23rd Avenue. There is a scheduled shift for South 317th Street to move to the north side of the road to complete the concrete panels there as well as the sidewalk, which will continue two-way traffic but move it down to the south side of the roadway onto some of the new panels. Roadway work for the new internal roads continues. They're doing a lot of asphalt and concrete road installation. So if you drive by, you see they've paved quite a bit in the middle as they're getting closer to being done. Construction of the new bus loop, also ongoing. They've done a lot of the concrete roadway work on the layover lot on the inside. I think they're probably 2/3 of the way done. Station work also ongoing, continuing with some elevator, escalator work, ceiling panel installation, flooring, and communication. Let's see, internal work for the garage extension continues with the HVAC trim, interior painting, and signage. They have put up about, I believe, half of the artwork for the garage is already there, and then the end-of-line facility interior work is wrapping up. And this is just a portion as they started the work for the artwork for the garage that I thought I'd share. I think it was also sent out through an email to some of the council members. Yeah, if you drive by now, there's quite a bit done, so it does have a good look. For Federal Link Extension, transit-oriented development has started to ramp up. They've got some community engagement started for the downtown station area. This includes an online open house that's started April 30th to run through June 3rd. And it's at federalwaytod.com. That's the website to do for their online open house. Includes a questionnaire, and they're just looking for some kind of visions and thoughts on the development in the downtown area. They're also going to be at the Farmers Market May 11th and May 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. To answer any questions as well. And then this is basically covering the 4 parcels that right now they're used as laydown area or prep for the other construction for the station. That will be basically between 317th and 320th, and then 21st and the new station. So for operations and maintenance facility south, not a lot to update. They are expecting to publish their final EIS in May of 2024, and then a decision from the board will follow. So kind of going back to that Christian Faith Center decision, we should know a lot more in the next couple of months. And then similar for Tacoma Dome Link Extension, I do not have any significant updates. I'll answer any questions.
Councilmember Honda, you get to start.
Thank you. First, I'd like to start with Belmore Park.
Yes.
Have those properties been purchased that need to be purchased, or what's
Not
the
yet.
status of that?
My understanding is they've approached some of the property owners, and they've had a few meetings, but they have not purchased any property yet.
Okay. Do we know how they're getting under the power lines yet?
So the plan is for BPA to raise the lines. at a certain point. They're in negotiations with them right now to try to figure out how that coordination will work. I think it's 2 of the towers need to be raised, and then the lines raised with them. And then it's also coordinating with our City Center Access Project on how well that works out. But yeah, the power lines will go up, and they'll just be able to go underneath them.
And does that impact the view of Mount Rainier from the PAC or the view corridor?
Probably.
And there's nothing we can do about that?
No, I don't think our regulations have any ability, we can't enforce our regulations against a federal agency like this, especially when it's an essential public facility likely that's causing the raising in the first place. But I think there's going to be overwhelming preemption type arguments that we don't have the ability to regulate the BPA power lines through our own code, even though our code says what it says about structures in that view corridor.
Okay. And the public art on the parking garage,
Yes.
it's very pretty. Is that as far down as it's gonna go, or will it go down and cover more floors?
So I believe it covers more floors. I was gonna check on it ahead of time, I just didn't get a chance, but my understanding was there's another half that goes for the bottom.
My other question is, how long is that expected to last? And if it were to fail at some point, which it will, because I don't know what it's made out of, but everything does fail eventually, who replaces it?
I'm not sure on the lifespan. I believe it's aluminum, so I think it's pretty hardy, and it would be Sound Transit's responsibility to replace if there's any issues with it, and they do have a program to maintain their art, so because it's art as well as it's not really a structural component, but it's a safety component with the screening, so.
Oh, okay. And on the other piece of public art, the lamp,
Yes,
do we have any more information on that?
I have not received an update on what it looks like. I do know they are getting close to pouring the foundation for the support for it, but that's as far as I've heard.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, part of the cement we were talking about earlier, the concrete they're pouring on the Gateway Center Boulevard, I've noticed that the height is way different. Did they have to bring it up quite a few feet? And is it gonna be level with the sidewalks next to it when they're done, or are they lifting the sidewalks up too?
Yeah, they will bring the sidewalks up as well. I'm not entirely sure why they raised the roadway section. I believe it has to do with drainage in order to get the flow correctly. But one half of it is significantly higher than
Yeah.
some of the existing, but the other stuff on the north side of 317 will raise up to meet that new roadway height.
So it'll be flush across?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
And my second question is, I think we've mentioned before, I just want to make sure, when you drive into Fedgeway on 320th, you've got right across the pass over the actual rail itself, that is completely off limits for being able to do anything with, right? There's nothing to be hanged on it, nothing to be touched, it affects with the maintenance and stuff, is that what they said?
Yeah, that was my understanding, is that there is they call it a pig seal that they have to do that protects the structure, that they have to be able to redo it every so often, so they specifically would not like us to have anything on the side of it.
Okay, that was it, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, kind of going back to the art on the parking structure. I mean, I think, from what I've seen of the art, it's been kind of, the views that I've had, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what it is, but provide some color and stuff. But did they consult with the city on what that art was? I don't remember anything about that specific art.
I don't know if they consulted with the city. I know they chose they attempted to choose a local artist for that art. I don't know if I remember where.
I know they presented it to the Arts Commission and seeked input on multiple artists. I'm pretty sure Sound Transit adopted the attitude that ultimately they're paying for this on their property. So they solicited feedback from the Arts Commission on the artists themselves, but then they kind of took the responsibility to oversee the actual design and installation themselves.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, question I have is, I'm assuming everybody received an email about open houses, and you had it on here, but it seemed like it was only a mile circumference from the area, or a very small distance that they were notifying people, and nobody in Federal Way lives in those areas. So it seems like we got this outreach going, but it's not reaching anybody in Marine Hills or Twin Lakes or the Ridge, so nobody knows what's going on. Is that just a normal way that they let people know?
I'm not sure on their requirement for TOD area specifically. I know when we do some of our outreach, there was a mileage limit on where you're required to actually.
Yeah, it was a modest limit of how far the notification was going, and, I mean, this is like the biggest thing that's hit Federal Way in anybody's lifetime, and is that just the rules? You only go so far, and we don't tell the rest of the 100,000 people what's about to happen, or?
So I think the mile limit is the physical mailed notifications.
Yeah.
And to Ken's point, there's more or less two sets of requirements. One is like code adopted requirements of what those notices are, and that ties to SEPA and NEPA, and that's usually a lot less than a mile.
Yeah.
And then Sound Transit, similar to the city, we actually have something as well, have a self-enforced notification. But, you know, I think they look at it from the perspective of that, whenever they do that around one of their stations, they look at it on a geographic basis, not necessarily a boundary basis. So, you know, where you're looking at like the Star Lake facility, which might be a better example for this conversation, that mile would extend to residents over Federal Way. It wouldn't be limited to just residents of Kent. So they kind of draw a circle, and that's their policy. That being said, the social media aspect of it, you know, what they have on their website, Facebook, Instagram, that they're pushing out, that's going out to as broad of a range of people as they can get to. They've certainly asked us, and we have shared it on our media channels as well. And, you know, that's something that, you know, anyone watching the meeting tonight can certainly see where the link was. But, you know, I mean, the city has the ability in all of these cases to try and amplify the message and share it broader. But that, you know, they have to come up with some policy, and that's what they've developed.
Well, I guess my only comment is we might, as a city, want to spread the word a little bit more.
Sure.
So more people know about it. I mean,
So that has been my beef with Sound Transit since day one, is that they don't send notices out to the entire city. They have the money to do it, we don't. And if you go back and watch meetings, I almost always say, this isn't right, you should be notifying the entire city, because it impacts the entire city. And Sound Transit they do the bare minimum, in my opinion, of what they have to do to notify people.
well, maybe, you know, comment, maybe what we should do with, the mayor has put out all these great news things that are sitting out here that the media people are putting out. Maybe we should take advantage of that network and press these meetings out a little further. That's all I guess I'm suggesting. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I think you're done, correct?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Other meeting, number 4, other, I don't think we have anything. 5, future meetings. We do have our next meeting, June 3rd, 2024. I will make a comment. I doubt I'll be at that meeting because I'll just be getting my new knee, so I may or may not be here. But Councilmember McDaniel has a couple things he'd like to see get onto future meetings. Would you like to maybe go over those, and then I'll work on getting them into the system?
Thanks, appreciate that. Yeah, there's 3 little items I'd like to look at. One of them is, since zoning was brought up today, and something I've been listening a lot about, we've done some rezoning around the mall. I'm curious to see what the zoning from the mall kind of going south looks like, and maybe look at what that is and how we're gonna look at planning that out for the 100-year plan we've been talking about. Another one, is a personal one for me, is a home buyers program. I met some people when I was in DC at the conference who had some ideas the city was able to do to help some first-time home buyers. So wanted to see if that was something that was maybe a feasible option to look at. And then the last one was a downtown sign. I know that we can't do anything with that building or the overpass that we have right now, but there is some, I believe, workarounds to be able to make our downtown more controllable with giving the impression we want to people when they come into town. So that'd be another item, some kind of downtown sign.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add before we close our meeting? Okay, we will now adjourn.
Bye, everyone.